Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation, the Magic Time System. And we're going to cover the first out of 3 modules. And we're going to focus on what's known as the PER optimizer today. Many of you are already familiar with me. I am currently a realtor in Crestview, Colorado, and will soon be incorporating San Diego, California. This webinar is for you if you feel burnt out, you feel like there's not enough time in the day, you crave more organization and efficiency, and you want to feel more energized and present with family, friends, and clients. So why the Magic Time System was created? Being an entrepreneur, and specifically a real estate professional, it offers unique challenges in how we manage our time. We wear many hats in not only the real estate world, but many hats in our personal life as well. The PER optimizer and ultimately all 3 sections of the Magic Time System were created to create order. The PER optimizer creates strategic modules to effectively manage your time to exponentially increase your output. And the Magic Time System includes the PER optimizer, and it folds in our personal life needs. So here's a little infographic here, really simple, circular, showing how all 3 of these modules work together. And we did blend out the other 2 so that we focus on step 1, and that is the PER optimizer. And in future webinars, we will release the other 2 and then dive deeper into the details at that time. All right, so the PER optimizer. What happened was I kept trying other coaching programs, time systems, and I felt like I kept failing and it was causing me stress. So I found a missing piece in the systems, and for me, it created freedom by creating a module utilization. And I'll explain what that means later. And I think that creating this module utilization was really helpful for realtors specifically. And I'm getting stuck here because I'm trying to figure out how far to go into this, but I'm just going to explain this later. And then I found that some business leaders work well in modules instead of full days. All right, so here's a great example that I love, and I'm going to borrow from a previous mentor of mine, and that's Dan Sullivan. I used to be a part of his strategic coach program, and he has 3 types of days that he describes in his entrepreneurial time system. Now we have 4. So the PER acronym PERR is for the 4 different types of days/modules. But he really focused his system off of 3. So he used this example, and I love the visual on this. So imagine Neapolitan ice cream. And as we know, it has 3 different types of ice cream. It has strawberry, it has chocolate, it has vanilla. And they all represent the different days in his system, which were only 3 days. So what happens with ice cream and Neapolitan ice cream if you leave it on the counter at room temperature all day? It melts. So as you can see, the different flavors start to blend into each other. And then when you leave it out for the entire day, it just turns into this brown mess. And I feel like this is such a great visual of what happens when you don't put order to your real estate activities. They all start to blend together into this horrible, murky mess. And at the end of the day, what you feel sometimes might be more stress and exhaustion than actual accomplishment. So what we did was we created order by creating 4 different ways in which you could focus your time as a real estate professional. I'm going to say the word days and modules, and just understand that if I say day, it can also mean module. And if I say module, it can also mean day. It's going to be based on how you choose to utilize, and we'll go through examples later. So PER, the first letter P stands for plan. The E is execute. The first R is reflect. And the second R is rest. And then we created this fun infographic because in my brain, I was thinking, oh, these two cats, one is like purr, and then the other one is no purr. And it's a great visual to kind of anchor that acronym for future utilization. All right, so the specific days. Plan means this day or module acts as cleanup and preparation between execute and rest days. Execute. These are revenue generating activity time periods. Reflect. These are time periods that you prioritize movement and you allow yourself to process work. I'll describe what I mean by this in a further detailed slide. And then rest. Rest and recovery times are times in which absolutely no work is performed or discussed. So why is this important? I mean, I think we already know why, but here's one good quote and then one good reminder. Jim Quick, he reminds us that when you multitask, some people feel like they're really efficient and just crushing it when they multitask. It's actually scientifically proven that you make more mistakes and ultimately you become less efficient and thus you lose time. Also, we're all familiar with Parkinson's law, and that is that the amount of work completed expands to fit the time available. For you procrastinators out there, myself included, we know this is true. Let's dive deeper into what the days really mean. And it's really important that we lay the foundation, because as we move through the examples and then as we move into the other two aspects of the magic time system, it's really important that you have this foundation down pat, because we're going to start, quote unquote, playing with them and start gaming our schedule in different versions that we're going to walk you through. And this is how we're going to create the ultimate level of optimization. But we're going to go through the first part now, which is, what do these days actually mean? Plan days. Like we mentioned, they act as cleanup and preparation between execute and rest days. So the plan days and modules, they are a time frame within your day in which you carry out all administrative work necessary so that you can fully honor your execute and rest timeframes. Here's what it could look like. I want to throw a caution in there that since we are all unique in who we are, we might find that some of these tasks tend to fall into plan task and some fall into execute, and they might be slightly swapped for you than they are for your friend. And that's because you're different in what actions create actual revenue generating income for you. So these examples are good examples that work for most people. Plan: returning client emails, returning staff emails, returning other agent emails, text updates to clients, scheduling showings, preparing CMAs for listings, create SOPs, standards of procedure, review photography and videography for listings, purchasing stationery, stamps for farming, Zoom calls with creative staff, meetings with your assistant, reviewing market data, writing marketing emails, and creating presentations. Execute. Execute are revenue generating activities. These are days or a module within your day in which you carry out all money making activities. And the goal, here's another little asterisk here, the goal is to have the majority of your activities in the future fall within those that bring you joy. Andrew Huberman, one of my favorite neuroscientists on earth, he has a quote here that says, "There is something to be said about a heightened level of attention to things that you enjoy." Here are some good example tasks for the execute timeframe. Listing presentation with a seller, buyer consults, working with fellow agents, educational webinars for your agents, filming videos for lead generation. I consider filming videos an execute task if it's with the intention and if it's with the result, it actually gains you leads. Dialing leads, emailing with active buyers, emailing with active sellers, hosting community events, hosting agent collaborative events, and then writing personal and anecdotal blogs. The same asterisk applies for the blog writing as for the videos. It's in how you utilize it. So again, if this activity gains you leads and it's a revenue generating activity, I believe it's an execute task. The first R, reflect. Reflect timeframes. These are days or modules that you prioritize movement and you allow yourself to process work. The two R's are easily confused with each other, so I'm going to dive into this one. Reflect module. This was actually the missing piece for me when I was looking at other productivity models. This is a day in which it's best to incorporate movement, and that is really a key piece, is movement with your reflection time. It's also scientifically proven that physical movement, it moves your brain and thus it changes your state. I have an activity that came about and I coined it the thought jar, and I'll share with you what that means on this next slide. So some good reflect examples would be yoga, hiking in nature, pleasure driving. And I don't mean driving in between appointments or when you're rushing off to do something. To me, this would be an example of a lazy Sunday drive. For me, long distance driving, I love road trips, and it's when I have some of my best reflect time periods. Skiing, mountain biking, drawing, dog walking, dancing to music, just going on a simple stroll by yourself. These are all great reflect tasks. What I found and how the reflect timeframe was created is that I realized that when I was taking my days off from work, that's usually when I would go do something fun, like take a hike. I wasn't as good about incorporating consistent activity, fun, joyful activity. So I would go get in my yoga, something like that. And there was something about that movement that of course is when I had all of my best ideas. And when I was stuck on something, that's when an answer would come to me. And then what would happen is, according to a lot of other productivity models, that's when you're supposed to be only focused on your personal life. So it's a quote unquote violation to think about work. But yet I was having breakthroughs as I was working through these activities, enjoying these activities. So I created what's called the thought jar, and how it started is in yoga. I would go to yoga class and I'd be in the middle of a pose, and all of a sudden I would have this idea or a thought or a really good podcast example or an answer to something I've been stuck on. And I'm in the middle of yoga class and I couldn't do anything about it. So I started to become stressed out because I was I was like halfway through and I couldn't just leave in the middle of class, but I didn't want to forget the idea because usually they were so good. So the thought jar, what I started to do was I brought a piece of paper with me, and I have an example here. And it was just a simple sheet of printer paper, and I would just fold it really, really simple. And then I would take a pen and I would clip it, and I would just put this on the front in front of my mat and then my water bottle. And when I was in the middle of yoga, if something brilliant came to me, I would just jot it down real quick and then put it back. What it did was it allowed me to get back to enjoying my movement. But I was giving myself the freedom to capture these thoughts that were happening. Now, Thought Jar has a second part to it, but I don't want to dive into that until we move into the next section of the magic time system, because I want to stay grounded in really having a deep understanding of these days. Okay, the last day, the last time frame is R for rest. So rest time frame, so rest days and modules. Rest and recovery days are days in which absolutely no work is performed or discussed. These are the days I greatly failed at, and this is why the reflect days were created. So rest modules or days, rest modules or days, they are time frames in which you focus on other areas of your life, your hobbies, your passions, your family, your friends. I say that it's best to completely eliminate work-related discussions It's going to be challenging. Most of you are going to struggle with this because I think it's natural that when we work for ourselves, that we're constantly processing our business. So give yourself grace as you move through this process. And in the beginning, just do your best to greatly minimize work-related topics. Some good examples here: yoga certification course, camping trip, road trip, ski vacation, mountain biking adventure, drawing class, dog training course, spending the day cooking. I was speaking with my creative gal, and she said she loves to spend the whole day just cooking for herself. A spa day at home, spa day out, dinner with your spouse, discovery days, covered in another time, magic time module, beach without cell phones, dance class, cleaning your house and laundry, watching TV or movies, meal prep, lunch with friends, reading a pleasure book. So as I work through these examples, you'll notice two things. One is that it's very easy to confuse reflect days or rest days. And the difference is the intent. It helps, for example, to leave your work cell phone at home. So some of you might have a personal cell phone and a work cell phone. I used to carry 2 cell phones all the time. And you just leave your work cell phone at home, and you hand it to an assistant, or you forward that number to someone that can handle any calls. Or these days, certain cell carriers allow your cell phone to have 2 numbers, or you can install various apps that allow you to have another number on the same device. Just make sure you turn off notifications, and if someone needs to be on call, that those are all forwarded to an assistant so people can't even get a hold of you. The point is that you ban work talk completely, eventually, completely. And you focus on being present with yourself and others that are important to you on a personal level. Now, the second thing you're going to notice here is that these example tasks range from really cool kind of bucket list items like a yoga certification course or ski vacations, so larger kind of items, to things you might just do in an evening or a weekend, like dinner with your spouse or spending the day cooking, to really mundane things like cleaning your house or laundry. So the goal for your rest days is that they don't act as just cleanup days for your personal life when you're not working. So you work really hard and then you go home and you just do laundry and clean the house. That's not any fun. So what we're going to work on in the future is, once you have this foundation down, we're then going to work on improving the quality and the joy that you receive out of your rest days. And then I didn't include this R in the acronym of PER, but what we do in the module version is we then repeat these various modules, and there's a very strategic way in which you utilize them so that you optimize your time. So I found personally that you can utilize PER as days, but I found that turning them into modules really created the ultimate freedom for real estate professionals. And there is a very specific order in which you must schedule. You first want to schedule your rest days first. So that's right. You schedule your personal time first. And then you schedule execute, your revenue generating activity time periods. Then you incorporate both plan and reflect timeframes in between rest and execute to act as a buffer and to transition between those two types of timeframes. So now that we went through those examples, what do we do about it? Here are 3 examples. You can have any version that you want as long as you follow the golden rule of scheduling and that it makes sense. So I'm going to give you 3 examples. And if you guys want to dive deeper into this, you can always shoot me a message, and I'm happy to guide you through the strategy of how you plan these modules to be the most effective. So the first example I'm going to give you is called minimum viable usage. This is a great version to use if maybe you're just really busy and the last thing in your life you have time for is to completely incorporate a whole new timing example, productivity example in your life, but you know you need to start making some changes because you're just running yourself ragged. So minimum viable is saying, listen, let's just get you started and we'll worry about the rest later. Okay. So let's just get a little bit of structure so you feel like you're starting to accomplish things in your day. And we'll slowly create a system to further reduce stress. So an example what this would look like would be very few modules. I have these planned out in 1 hour chunks. So you'll see here, Sunday to Saturday. And what I do is I'm very strategic in how these are mapped out. So Sunday, what I would say is Sunday's a great day to try to escape work for just a little bit. It tends to be a more acceptable day to not be available. While I know that real estate never sleeps, this does tend to be a time frame in which if you're going to not be available, it's most widely accepted. So what I said was, let's just start with 3 modules on Sunday from noon until 3 o'clock, 3 hours. You don't have your work cell phone on you. You're not reachable. You don't talk about work, period. And if you can just honor those 3 hours on Sunday, you won your day. Anything that helps, anything that happens in other time frames, you do what you need to do. Monday. I personally prefer Mondays as plan days. And I prefer Tuesday and Thursday as execute timeframes. And that's for a very strategic reason. Tuesdays and Thursdays tend to be great timeframes to get a hold of clients. That's true for social media. That's true for your email cadence and scheduling. It's also true for trying to reach out to other agents and to reach out to current clients and potential clients. So you'll see here 1 module on Tuesday, 1 module on Thursday. If for 1 hour a day, you can just put in a solid, healthy time period of revenue generating activity, you won the day. Doesn't matter what else happens in the day, you won the day. Going back to Monday, I really prefer them to be plan days. This is where you clean up all those little messes that you have to clean up or all the things that you need to do in preparation so that you can just crush it on Tuesday. Friday, I also like to have as a plan day and kind of you clean things up in preparation to have a less busy Saturday. Saturdays, I'm going to come back to Wednesday. Saturdays, you'll see here that again, I know a lot of you tend to show property over the weekend. So for me, how I view this is minimum viable usage. If you can get 2 solid hours at the end of your Saturday where you don't have your laptop, your cell phone, you don't talk to anybody about work, then you're crushing it. As well, what I really love is when Saturday can blend into a Sunday series of rest modules. So you get that evening and the morning to decompress. So that, to me, that's a really beautiful strategy for you to be able to get true relaxation in. And then the final day, we haven't talked about Wednesday. I love Wednesdays as reflect days. For me personally, I love to have Wednesday as a light work day from anything. It just really allows you to breathe, to regroup your energy so that you can go back and crush the remaining week. And so again, just 1 hour Wednesday, if you can get out and go on a walk and listen to a podcast, take your dog for a walk. For me, I tend to go to a vinyasa yoga class, and I take that little sheet of paper with me. That's what really works for me. All right, so that's minimum viable. Let's move pretty quickly through this next one since we went pretty in depth on that first example. So solo agent example, you're going to see there's a lot of modules here. I personally don't believe that you should schedule out more than 70%, maybe 80% of your calendar. An over-scheduled entrepreneur is an unhappy entrepreneur, and you just won't honor it. And you can't. Things happen in our days. So I don't love overscheduling. So I would definitely not schedule more than this. But for those of you that really want to show up with a new time system then maybe start here. So remember, we plan rest days first. So again, you'll see these peppered throughout, and then execute days second, and then plan and reflect days as transitions. Sunday, our goal is to eventually take the full day off if you can, or maybe it's a Saturday, maybe it's a Wednesday, you choose your day. Eventually you want to get a full 24 hours in. But for now, what we did was, let's do our morning routine. You have some free time to do what you need to do with life. It might be work, unfortunately, or fortunately. And then you're going to get 3 solid modules of rest in. Around 12 noon, you might eat, you might do a little work, and then ideally you just take the rest of the day off. So the goal here is you do a little bit of work early in the day and maybe midday, but you're really trying to take most of the time off. And actually, I didn't mention this. The only other little piece here is at 7:00 p.m. You'll see that I stuck a plan module in there. And that is because as a solo agent, I find that it's incredibly challenging to go into Monday cold. So if you don't spend an hour of mapping out your day, going through priorities, I find that you might feel like you move into Monday on your heels. So I do throw an hour planning on Sundays. Monday, you'll see here what a potential routine might look like is morning routine, few hours, take care of life. And then you move in at 8 a.m. into a plan module. So you take care of all of those little tasks that have to get done. Hour later, move into an execute module, start performing those revenue generating activities, and then decompress for a few modules and move into reflect. And this just allows everything that just happened to kind of have some space. Take a lunch, move back right into execute. And you can see there how you really prepared yourself to show up really strong for your second execution module for your revenue generating activities. So you're really strong and fresh for your clients. Okay, so you guys can see the rest of these days and how they're mapped out and why. I'm going to move into the third example, and I give you copies of all 3 of these examples. You can request these on our website, so you can dive deeper into these. Last one, here would be a good example for a team lead. So slightly different usually as a team lead. So pretend Sunday, morning routine, same thing, do what you need to do in the mornings. Maybe it's work, maybe it's hanging out with the family, maybe it's, who knows what it is, right? But there's some time there that's really not scheduled. Then ideally we get a couple of hours of rest modules in there. So absolutely no work is discussed. Lunch, whatever happens, happens. And then another 3 hours of the rest module. Then it's a blank, and blank means continue your rest. If you have to clean up and do a little bit of work, it's okay. You know, we're trying our best here. And then you're going to see what's different for team leads is then we have at 5 o'clock a plan module and then a reflect module. Team leads, what I've noticed is that they tend to hold a lot of team meetings on Mondays. And so for them, going into Monday cold is challenging as well, but for a different reason. It's because they're usually running meetings for their agents that they need to be prepared for. So this is a great time to not only plan and then also have a reflection module. All right, Monday, then again, I prefer them to be more planning oriented than execution oriented, as I like Tuesdays and Thursdays strategically. But for now, what I find is that team leads might move into planning at 8 a.m., execute at 9 a.m., and execution could be running your team meetings at 9 a.m. And then at 10 a.m., maybe it's working on revenue generating activities, which would be activities to bring more good agents onto your team, and then move into a reflect module. So go move, change your state, write down thoughts that come out, and then you break. And then I love to have it where you can kind of just plan and clean up the rest of the day. And then when you move into Tuesday, you can see that we have plan to prepare for your day and clean up. And then you move into 3 heavy hitting execute modules right away. So again, examples that you can review this further, and you can request this. So ultimately, you guys, many of you are familiar with the rock exercise, and this is why we have the order of the modules that they are in. Let's pretend there's 3 different types of rocks, and the big rocks, they represent priorities in your life. Pebbles, those are things that are important and they have to be done, but maybe they're not of the utmost importance. And then sand, they're just little things that aren't a priority, but isn't it funny how those little things can easily eat up all our time in a day if we're not careful? So what happens? I know a lot of you guys know this exercise. So jar 1, we put the sand in first. So all those things that don't matter, they go into the jar first. The pebbles go in second, and then the big rocks last. And for those of you that have physically carried out this exercise, what happens is it doesn't all fit. But what happens when you reverse the order and you put the large rocks, your priorities, in first, and then the pebbles second, and then the sand last? It's the same amount of each type, but in the second version, it all fits. This is why we schedule our modules the way that we do. All right, so like I mentioned, we have some great resources for you guys. We have the 3 calendar examples. You can actually see how those were strategically created. I'm also going to throw in a copy of the best weekly planner. I call this my $30,000 weekly planner because that's what it costs for me to ultimately create this. And it's been revised so many times. Really cool tool. And when I talk about planning on Sundays, this is the tool that I use. We didn't have time to go through it today, but I can, if you guys would like, in a future webinar. It's a really amazing planner. And we'll do that. Actually, yeah, let's just plan on it. I'll do a deep dive into this because you'll see it's pretty different than other planners I've seen. All right. So that's it for today. If you have any additional questions about our Good Life community for real estate agents or about real brokerage, please reach out. Dave and I are here for you. If you have questions or you're stuck on scheduling, reach out to me, and have a beautiful rest of your morning.